Alright, today guys, we're going to be talking about something that I saw yesterday afternoon, probably yesterday evening would be more accurate, and it was this article from the Boston Globe, and it was talking about the top coaches and players in the NFL that were on the hot seat, so to speak. So if you don't know what the hot seat is, I'll explain it to you. The hot seat is basically a term that in sports we use for coaches or high-profile players that aren't meeting expectations, aren't getting the job done in their current situation, and they are close to being fired. So their seat is hot, basically. It's getting hot, they're ready to get fired, basically, is the gist of what the hot seat means. So I saw this article, and I was curious. I thought, oh, I wonder if there's any big names on this list. So I clicked on it, I read the article a little bit, and I saw a few names that piqued my interest. I'm going to talk about 3 of them today. There's more on here that we could go into in a later date, but I'm going to talk about the 3 that really piqued my interest. So, number 1 was, this isn't in any order. They didn't have them like listed at any way, like in 1 through 10 or anything like that. It wasn't like that. It was just listing guys and players' names and stuff. So, basically, the first guy that I saw that piqued my interest was Cliff Kingsbury of the Arizona Cardinals. And the player that went with him was obviously Kyler Murray. And so I was like, okay, I can see how Cliff Kingsbury could be on a little bit of the hot seat. I mean, he's had some pretty high expectations since he's joined the league. He drafted his own quarterback, and his quarterback has done decently well. Not anything spectacular yet in the league. He still has to prove that he can play in the league. And so I got to thinking, I was like, is Cliff Kingsbury on the hot seat? And I thought, I wouldn't put Cliff Kingsbury on the hot seat. Not just yet. He hasn't had enough time to really establish himself in the league yet. So Cliff Kingsbury, not on the hot seat. His seat might be getting a little bit warm, especially if he has another letdown season in 2021, then his seat might start to get a little bit more warm and maybe even turn to like the hot seat where he could get fired after next season. But that's next season. I don't think he's got any worries about getting fired this year. Even if they don't make the playoffs, I think he'll get at least 1 more year to try and figure things out. So Cliff Kingsbury, I don't think is on the hot seat. The second person that I saw that piqued my interest was Mike Zimmer of the Minnesota Vikings. And this one was one of the ones where I was like, yes, this is exactly right. The player that went with him was obviously his quarterback, Kirk Cousins. And so Mike Zimmer's an interesting one. He's a good defensive coach. He's a good defensive-minded coach. He's even a good offensive-minded coach at some points. But he's had some really, really good teams in Minnesota, and they haven't been able to capitalize on that. They had Stephon Diggs. They have Adam Thielen. They got one of the best running backs in the league in Dalvin Cook. They've got a really solid defense, and they haven't been able to put it together. Now, maybe you put that blame on Mike Zimmer, or maybe you put that blame on Kirk Cousins. Because in my opinion, I've talked about this a ton on the channel, how I don't think that Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback at all. I think he's a manageable quarterback. I think that he can win you a game or two if you need him to, but he's never going to be the reason you win a game. I don't think. Like, he's never going to be the reason you're successful in the NFL. I just don't think he's that kind of quarterback. And so I could see not only Mike Zimmer getting fired after this year, but Kirk Cousins getting either traded or just cut, because I think after next season, or after this season, his contract isn't that bad. Like, the dead money's not that bad if they just cut him. But I feel like either he could get traded or just released, and then Mike Zimmer could get fired if they have another letdown season, because that's just where the Minnesota Vikings franchise is at this point. I mean, they traded their franchise wide receiver because he couldn't get along with Kirk Cousins. They put all their eggs in the Kirk Cousins basket. They paid him all this money, $80 million, I think they paid him, and he hasn't really produced. He's been a okay quarterback. He's been a top 20 quarterback, but there's 32 teams in the league, so if you're top 20, you're not that great. So And he's probably at the lower end of the top 20. And so if the Vikings have another bad season, I shouldn't say if they have another bad season. Obviously, if they have a bad season, he's getting fired. But if they have another letdown season where they miss the playoffs or they get knocked out in the wild card or they don't win the division, I think that Mike Zimmer's time there is done. And I hate to say that because I like Mike Zimmer. I think he's a good coach. But I think that if they have another disappointing season, he's gone, Kirk Cousins is gone, and they start fresh. I don't know who the coach would be and who the quarterback would be, but I think they have to start fresh. And the third and final person that we are going to be talking about today is my quarterback and my head coach, Bill Belichick and Mr. Cam Newton. Yes, Bill Belichick and Cam Newton were on this Boston Globe list, and it's a tough. I'm trying to not put my bias as a Patriots fan into this argument and into this discussion. I want it to be as unbiased and as fair as possible. So I'm trying to separate that, and it's a little bit difficult. So Bill Belichick has been the coach for 20 plus seasons in New England. They've won all of these Super Bowls. 6 Super Bowls with Tom Brady. And people make the argument that Tom Brady was the reason they won 6 Super Bowls. Not Bill Belichick. At least not as much Bill Belichick. But I would argue that those early Super Bowls in the early 2000s, was as much the defense as it was Tom Brady. But we won't get into that argument. And then in the 2010s, when they beat the Seahawks, that was a lucky play with Malcolm Butler. When they beat the Falcons, that was an amazing comeback. The Falcons blew that lead. And so when they beat the Rams, that was just an ugly game. Nobody wanted to watch that game. And so you could argue that the 3 of the Super Bowls were mainly the defense, and 3 of the Super Bowls were mainly Tom Brady. I guess the early Super Bowls, you could make the argument that Tom Brady was a pretty big part, but we won't get into that. So last season really threw a wrench into this whole who's the reason the Patriots won the Super Bowls. Is it Tom Brady or is it Bill Belichick? Or is it both? Can they not work without each other? Because Tom Brady went out first year on a new team. Yes, he brought in some pretty high-profile talent around him, and the Bucs already had pretty high-profile talent there when he stepped in, but he did take them to a Super Bowl and beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, who nobody thought could be beaten. So it does throw a wrench into the plans, or into the argument that Belichick didn't need Brady to win the Super Bowls. And I used to be in the camp that it was a team effort, that neither one could succeed without the other. And then Brady goes and does that. Goes and wins a Super Bowl without him. So, and the Patriots did what they did last year. They go 7-9 and missed the playoffs. So, is Bill Belichick on the hot seat? No. In my opinion, Bill Belichick's not in the hot seat. Cam Newton is on the hot seat, though. Especially with Mac Jones being there now. I still think that Cam Newton will be the starter day one, but if Cam Newton starts to slip a little bit during the season, at the halfway point or a little bit later, I think we could be seeing some Mac Jones action, some Maction in New England. I think we could be seeing that. Especially if Cam Newton is struggling like he did last season after he came back from the virus. So, Belichick, not on the hot seat in my opinion. I think that the only way that Bill Belichick is not the head coach of the New England Patriots is if he says that he's not going to be the head coach of the New England Patriots. Belichick is at a point, whether that be because of Tom Brady or not, Belichick is gotten to this point where the only way he's immune to being fired, unless he does something outrageous, like some sort of scandal or something comes out behind Bill Belichick. Other than some crazy, outlandish thing happening to force Robert Kraft to fire Bill Belichick, the only way that he is not the head coach is if he retires or just says he's done. Just says he's not going to coach anymore. That's the only way. It's the same with Nick Saban at Alabama. It's the same with Greg Popovich in San Antonio. Some coaches have earned that immunity to being fired unless some crazy thing, like I said, happens. So, and Belichick is one of those guys. So, Belichick not on the hot seat, in my opinion. Now, if the Patriots go 7-10 or 6-11 this upcoming season, and they don't have an above 500 record, even though 500 doesn't exist anymore. If they don't have a positive record, or if they don't make the playoffs, then we start talking about maybe Belichick should retire. Maybe he's lost his touch. Maybe he does need Tom Brady, and he can't do it with anybody else. We'll have those discussions if that happens. So right now, Belichick's not on the hot seat. Right now, Cam Newton is on the hot seat. Mac Jones is waiting in the wings. And who knows, Mac Jones might not be the guy either, but if Cam Newton starts to suck a little bit, we got to find out. So we might as well put him in. So that's my opinion. I tried to put as much unbiased opinion out there on the Patriots as possible. I know it's a little bit tough since I am a huge Patriots fan, but that's my honest, true opinion about the Patriots situation, if Belichick's on the hot seat or not. If you guys want to hear more about what I think the Patriots are going to do this season, let me know down below. I'll do a separate video on that. I may even do that anyway as it gets close to the season when training camp starts and stuff, on how I think the Patriots are going to do as a whole this season. But that's what I think about these three options. There was plenty more that we could talk about. There's a lot of other players and coaches on this Boston Globe article that we could talk about, but I just wanted to target those three specifically because those are the three that intrigued me the most. So let me know down below what you guys think. If you guys agree with me, if you guys agree with the Boston Globe, if you guys agree or disagree with anything that I've said, if you guys think that Belichick is on the hot seat, if you guys think that Mike Zimmer's not after this season. I don't know. Just let me know what you guys are thinking down below in the comments. That's going to do it for me. Thank you guys so much for stopping by and watching. Make sure to smash that like button, notification bell, and the subscription button as well. Join the Juice Club, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.